Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where the orchard of wisdom shows are at your fingertips. It ignites your soul, your heart, your spirit, your mind, and your body with illumination from people who have made the journey before you. They're here now to help you on your journey, on your path of self-discovery. We are funded by you, the audience, and the people we interview. If you wish to support us, please go to selfdiscoverymedia.com and press on our Fund Action button. Anything is appreciated. We'd like you to sit back and enjoy the shows. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Quantum Spirituality, right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my guest all the way from Ireland is Dr. Mary Helen Hensley. We're going to be talking about many of her books, but also going to be talking about past, near-death experience. She had this experience quite a while ago. I'm going to get back up to the front here, and was involved in a car accident that was to change her life forever. With vivid clarity, she was able to recount all that took place during that near-death experience, along with the reconnecting to her life's purpose and to healing. She has facilitated healing process of countless individuals and is one of Ireland's and Europe's most sought after metaphysical healers. And we're going to be talking about how Promised by Heaven got its name, one of her books. We're going to be talking about some of her other books, Understand the New Healing, Bringing Death into Life, and also High and the Manti. So we have a lot to talk about here today. So let us dive right into it, into our discovery of Dr. Mary Helen and all that has happened to you. Did the books all happen after your near-death experience? Welcome to the show, love.
Hello, and thanks for having me.
My
Yes,
pleasure.
they did. Yeah, absolutely, they did. Promised by Heaven was actually 3 different books. And it's one of those things that when everybody dreams of that phone call where your friend goes, "Hey, are you sitting down?" Yeah. Well, Simon and Schuster just took your books. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So my bestie, Patricia Scanlon, who's a best-selling author here in Ireland many times over, had enjoyed the books and sent them off to Simon and Schuster, and that's kind of how it began. But it was initially Promised and Circles of Light and The Land Beyond the River. And so they decided when they do that, it was at the time when Eben Alexander's book was out, Proof of Heaven. And they were like, this is doing really well with heaven in the title. And so suddenly Promised became Promised by Heaven. And that's how that title got its name. And that's quite common in publishing. And
Yes.
The one thing I was very delighted about was being able to retain the title or the cover, because that is my little girl who is now 17. And she was just up on that hill with her arms out, and I had just snapped that photo actually around this time of year at a place called Bridget's Garden, which is a beautiful space set up here in Ireland to St. Bridget. And we've just had Bridget's Day recently. And yeah, so that's how Promised by Heaven came to be. Promise was initially written for my 2 girls, because from a very early age, what I had to die and come back with, I started to notice that they had already. So, I mean, from the time I was small, I had the ability I would dream things, they would come true. I could see people who weren't in a physical body the same way that I'm speaking to you via this technology. And each of my girls was starting to express their own kind of interesting abilities. My oldest daughter, Gemma, her track record with pregnancies was incredible. She could walk up to someone who didn't even know they were pregnant and go, "Oh, there's a baby girl in your tummy." And then 100 people later, she would just go up, and I had to go, "Okay, sweetie, they might not want to know that." And she loved just going and sticking her hands on somebody's belly and going, "That's a baby boy," or whatever. So I was watching this happen with her. Jada was interesting because she was a late talker. And when she finally began to talk, she was furious at me. And this was so interesting because one day I was like, Jada, why do you always, you seem so mad at me? And she was the cutest little thing with the blonde hair and just the little face. And she started pointing at her skin and she goes, why is my skin this color? And I was like, oh. And so Miss Jada was very upset that her skin was not dark. And she had such a connection to that. And was really, it took her a little while to love the skin she was in and to step back into a space where she realized, hang on a second, I'm the one who chose this.
Yes.
And, you know, but when a child is sitting there going, where's my beautiful dark skin?
Yeah.
Because her memory is of having been somebody else in beautiful dark skin. It was really interesting. So I went, yeah, you know what? Gosh, my parents really struggled with all of this stuff, and I really need to start writing some things down. And so this was how Promised began. And it started as a manual for my girls, and I didn't want them to grow up thinking that they were odd or weird or strange.
Yes.
It's just who we were.
Right. Exactly. That beautiful gift to your children, because yeah, I grew up with that, and it was like, well, why don't other people play with dimensional people or dead people? You know, why can't other people see this? You know, and just kind of considered different. But I didn't understand what the difference was. You know, it was like, but you know, why am I different? And if you don't have that support from somebody, you know, that says, you know, this is just your beautiful insight in the way you see things or the way you feel things, and it's a beautiful gift to have, and how to manage it, right? Because if you're given a gift, it's how do we manage it? If we don't have that guidance, we're really kind of feeling a little persecuted, or feeling that we have to hide, or you know, just literally flapping in the wind, not knowing what to do with it.
Exactly. And that's what I didn't want them to have, because, you know, there are so many people hear about your gifts and they're like, oh my gosh, you can talk to dead people, and oh, you know this before this happens. And they don't realize there are two sides to that coin.
Yes.
And it comes to mind this story where it was extraordinary, actually, because it was a combination of the electronic phenomenon, where I had gone home once. My girls were very small, and this is actually in one of my books. And my next door neighbor, who it would always be these flying visits. She was my piano teacher growing up. I loved her dearly, Mrs. McLean. And anytime I would come home from Ireland, like it would be like a whizzing visit. I'd hug her, and you know, that was it. And she was like, the next time you come home, you are coming out with me. And she was dying to show me our natural history museum that was new in our town. She was very proud of it. And so I made time this one trip and to go with her to this museum. And we got to, the display was about these Native Americans. And we're standing outside of this a wigwam replica. And I took a photo of Mrs. McLean. So later, when I got home and I was showing my girls, and they were, again, quite small, the pictures on the laptop, all of a sudden we got to that picture of Miss McLean and it froze. You know, it was just where you go from one to the next to the next. And first of all, I am no technological genius, I can tell you that. And these were all still photographs. It was just a camera. There was the video capacity. This is a long time ago. And we got to that picture and it froze and it refused. It wouldn't move forward. It wouldn't move back. And it was stuck on this picture of Miss McLean. And next thing, there is a voice coming through the computer. Don't be afraid. His time is here. And it said it over and over and over, to the point where I was able to run up the stairs, grab a little recorder, because that's what we did in those days. And that's really not that long ago, because my girl's, 19.
You're right. But technology has moved so fast.
That weird window, where we still use the little dictaphone. And there wasn't the video camera on the phone yet. And so I ran up and I got the phone to call my mother, because I wanted her to hear this. So I rang my mother and she's like, hello. And I said, Mom, listen to this. And I stick the phone up to the computer, which is still repeatedly saying, don't be afraid, his time is here. And the girls are shrieking, whose time? What's happening? Who is this? And then they're like, they called her Mrs. Acclaim. Is Mrs. Acclaim okay? And I was like, Mom, can you hear this? And she goes, yes. And she goes, well, should we tell them? And I'm like, yeah, how's that phone call gonna go?
Right.
And this was one of those weird moments where my girls are watching this and I'm having to sit them down and I'm like, girls, I think something is getting ready to change in the McLean's life, because they knew them from going to visit grandma and grandpa. And they were very concerned. And I said, now this is saying his time is here. So this could very well mean that it's time for him to be leaving Earth now. Mm-hmm. And Gemma just began to wail. Mm-hmm. And she was like, I don't want to know this. Mm-hmm. And it was like looking at this little version of myself. And I don't ever recall being angry over knowing things. Mm-hmm. And then I looked at her and I went, my God, I grew up like that, knowing all this stuff. And it wasn't always pleasant.
Right.
And
exactly.
Everybody thinks it's so cool. I see dead people.
Right.
Yeah. And sometimes they're people that you really love. And there is that we're human too. And we've got to deal with that. It's just getting the memo before and having to digest it before the event has happened. Yes. And so I wanted to write a book about that. And that was the event that actually prompted me to start writing these stories, so that my girls would know and remember and connect with, that there was an understanding that, you know, as Gemma was screaming, this just isn't fair. And I just looked at her, you know, as her mother, and I went, it's not. No, it isn't fair. But this place isn't about fairness.
That Earth isn't. It's lessons. It's not always about fair lessons, but it's learning how to deal with it. We're given it. There's a reason for it. Whether we like it or not, we have to accept it and embrace it. The more you embrace it, the easier it becomes. Absolutely. Now, this happened after your car accident, that it opened up you recognizing the gift of your children, and your own gift.
Because my children were born here in Ireland, and like my accident happened in 1991. I was 21 years old, so I moved to Ireland. I think I was 28 when I moved here, and I was 32 and 34, I guess, when I had the girls, or 33 and 35, somewhere around there. And, you know, so it was much later that I actually started writing this down, but I was always a journaler. So I had journal after journal after journal, because I mean, the things that had happened to me in my life were extraordinary. And my mother is a journaler. So much of the content of my first 3 books came from things that my mother had written down. And it was really interesting. Not the other day, but it's been not that long ago, she pulled out a notebook and she goes, I want to remind you of something. And I think it was 1987 that this particular notebook was from. And she's just pages after pages of things that I would tell or dream or say. And in 1987, I said to my mom, you want to keep an eye on a man called Fauci? Uh-huh. And she said, who is that? And I said, just keep an eye. And it was just coming out, you know, we were just really hearing about HIV. Mm-hmm. And I said, and so Mom has it written in her notebook. And I said, this is not going to work out well. And this is where it begins. Mm-hmm. And so she pulls this notebook out the other day and she was like, can you believe? And I was like, well, I think we know at this stage. Yeah, I can believe it. And that was though how we got all this content, because every time I'd call home and there would be some other wild story, or Mom would call to tell me somebody was dead and I'd beat her to the punch. Right. It always went in the notebook. And so it was actually quite easy writing those first 3 books, because we were able to just reminisce through these stories, and she had written it all down. And it was funny because now, fast forward to 2022, I had something up on Facebook today, and it was a picture of Jada, my 17-year-old, and we're not Catholic. We don't subscribe to any kind of organized religion, but because they were in Catholic school, my girls wanted to go through the Holy Communion. And so they did, for the experience. And we had a big chat about it and all. And this picture pops up on my memories, and it's Jada in the big cathedral, and the priest has got his hands in his head, and she's just standing there with her little hands. And the comment from back then, it was, 10 years ago, said, this is exactly what Jada said, standing in front of the priest. Sin, ? Mister, I'm only 7. So Facebook memories have become my version of my mother's notebook.
Right. Yes. I love them too, because they bring, and it's always seems to be what they bring up is something that's very appropriate to the time. Right.
Completely.
Yeah.
Which usually generally begins with, oh my God, I thought I was so fat then.
Yeah.
And I wasn't.
Right, exactly. Sometimes it's like, oh my God, did I post that?
Okay, that was a cute outfit. Not.
But I mean, certainly, your mom gave you a gift of writing things down. Mine was more, you don't really talk about it mainstream. My mom was very fair. We were both seers, so we could both read, do readings, etc. But it really wasn't kind of public knowledge. It really wasn't something that we really kind of talked about. And even to this day, I really won't talk about it to my family to the extent that I do here. Because there's still that barrier where you can't, if you go any further, it's too far-fetched. It's too far out there. And
make no mistake, these notebooks were because we didn't speak about it.
Right.
My father was a Southern Baptist minister, darling. So you can imagine him trying to stuff this kiddo into his box.
Right.
And wow, that was something, because he couldn't deny.
Yes.
That I would walk in and go, Dad, Mr. Smith is here, who had died last Tuesday, and he'd like to help you write his eulogy.
Right.
He couldn't deny it. It was happening all the time.
Yes.
But he would go, it was so funny. That's where promised came from, was my dad had a visit from 2 beings after my parents had been told that because of the German measles my mother had contracted during the first stages of pregnancy, that I wasn't going to be okay. There was going to be, they were just like, forget if the child even survives, there's going to be lots of problems. Go home and get your heads around that. And so my parents went home, and of course, as any Southern Baptist does, started praying.
Yeah.
And my father gets this visit, and this was the funniest part for me looking back at it, because he could not say angels, because when you look at the biblical portrayal of what an angel is, these didn't fit the bill.
Right.
So my dad is standing here looking at these celestial beings, was the nicest thing he could say about these humanoid type figures who came and went, hey, not only is your daughter going to be okay, and remember, that was 1969. And not only is your daughter going to be okay, there's no ultrasound. She's going to have some unusual abilities. And so he would always tell me, in times of trouble, you're promised. And that's where that title actually came from. So it was so funny, because here was mom, write this down. And that's where all the notebooks came from, because my father said, absolutely under no circumstances, he said, you have a gift. We know this is a gift from God. We are so proud of you. However, everybody else out there in the world isn't necessarily going to see your gift as a nice thing.
Yes.
And we don't talk about this, to the point where we didn't speak. My siblings didn't know. And this was really, so imagine getting that landed on you later on, and they're like, right.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. So I become now the wacko of the family who's made up all these things, and my mom's going, no, that happened. Yep. No. Yep. That happened. Yeah, no, she did have that brain tumor. Yeah. And she did heal herself from cancer. And that neck was broken. And it was all, news to them, because you get into a habit of not sharing.
It's telling them what they need to know, just so that door isn't open. It's my brother and sister are both quite a bit older than me. My brother is an author. All his intuition and his metaphysical comes out in his writing, right? In his day-to-day life, I call him the humbug. Everything is, no. It's just negative about everything. But in his books, he goes into multi-dimensions, and he's always out there completely. And for me, that's his truth. He just won't own it. in his everyday life. And my sister, who, you know, calls herself a devout Catholic, just wouldn't have anything to do with it. Right. So it was just not something Mum and I knew, kind of, but again, nothing was really talked about. So, you know, I remember seeing the movie Sixth Sense, and I'm in my 40s at that point, and we, you know, where the kid says, "I see dead people," and I go, "Yay!"
I know. I was like, "Me too."
Yes.
At the screen.
And it's like, I've never known whether, you know, people just would like to say to your imagination. But I was a very sickly child and in bed a great deal and alone for long periods of a time. No radio, no TV, no iPod, no phone, none of that. So off I went traveling and being in all sorts of different dimensions, and I couldn't tell you where they were, only that I was there. And then I would have a memory, no, you haven't done that here. You know, so, okay, I must have done that over on another dimension. But it's so utterly natural that, you know, that when I talk about it and people will go, don't you feel odd saying that? No, because it just feels so utterly natural. But to people who are not yet there, it is something like, ooh, where are the white coats coming to take her away? Aha. You know?
Aha, to take her away.
But I think things are changing. And I think certainly podcasting has certainly done that. Also, since 2012, the frequency's been turned up. It's been turned up on us every single year, and at the present moment being turned up quite exponentially to a higher consciousness, to opening up to that we're not just these blobs of flesh. We are beings having a human experience, and that we're so much more than just this vehicle that we're in. And I think there is a wonderment and a fascination now, and a permission for people who know that there's something there, but they're not quite sure, that permission to explore and to understand where they are, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm noticing it in my patients and my clientele. You know, I still do work as a chiropractor, and simultaneously I'm doing all of my healing work as well. And so one thing that I have noticed over the past couple of years is that the children that are coming in are completely different. So like, for instance, I had a fella come in, he was only 8, and he had researched me and asked his mother to bring him to me, and she did, from quite a distance. And we get behind closed doors, and he takes her by the hand and he said, "Mom, I wanted to bring you here because I know this is going to be hard for you to hear, and I wanted you to have someone who understands."
And he's 8
to help you through this. And I was like,
yes.
So little man was an interdimensional traveler.
Right.
Gave us his other name, was, you know, he was in his 30s elsewhere, and he was working on book research, and he had come back in 8 years previous into this body in order to get something. And the funniest thing is, like, his capacity for bringing information across, so, and his understanding of physics. So he was actually, not only was he an author, but he had been something akin to, you know, an astrophysicist type thing. And he looks at me at one stage, and it was just so matter of fact. And here's his mom, you know, like, and he looks at me at one stage, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. How are you getting on?" And he was like, "These damn hands are so small." And I was like, "Well, you know, you could have walked in. You know, why did you come into a new body?" And he was like, "There's a reason for it." And he explained that. No, just fascinating what these kids are coming in with now, and how open they are to talk about it. And I've got drawings all over the place in my office here, where there will be the kid, and then there'll be 6 other beings around. And I'm like, "Who are these?" "Oh, well, they're not from here." "So are they ETs?" "No." And their understanding of the difference between what has been portrayed as an alien, which is, you know, actually the vast majority of time an interdimensional traveler.
Right.
And it's like, you know, they're waiting for this big reveal. Now, next it'll be the aliens.
Yeah.
They've been here all along, you know, that's the big reveal.
But they are right about the big reveal. The big reveal is coming. Right?
Oh,
you know,
absolutely.
We're getting up to that frequency now enough the tilting is enough to be at that frequency where they can be revealed. And they have to be, because at this point, they're almost tearing their non-hair out, going, for God's sake, humans, we've been assisting you for so long, but you're so slow. Here you can do this technology, but you can't move away from old patterns or old griefs or your judgment and everything else. It's time to move on and ascend to a higher plane here on earth. And I think they're going to make themselves known and just say, we're here to help because you guys are just too slow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like all other projects, that one's being hijacked as well. So they're interfering with the way that information is revealed. It's just like, I'm like, give it a rest.
Yeah, I know. Yes. Yeah. And the thing is, we're seeing so much protesting on so many things right now. And for me, it feels like those that are already reaching up to the higher frequency, the higher vibration, the quantumness of the energy, those that are reaching there are leaving others behind. And those that have been left behind know there's something going on, know there's a distance being parted between it, and they're fighting it because they know the change is coming and they don't want the change. And so they're the ones making the most noise.
And that shift, have you seen that? It's like that, the pendulum balls, that the shift is such that there are those of us, and it's not a better than, it's a different experience that we're having.
Yeah.
But those of us who've been kind of in this experience for a long period of time and have always known that there was something else going on. It's like when you're dealing with a child and the child is working out a complicated problem and you sit patiently and allow them to do that. You don't get mad at a kindergartner who can't do algebra.
Right.
But I'm seeing amongst our kind, it's not that we've grown impatient, but it's almost like a sense of, okay, I'm giving you all the time I could to get here, but I can't keep doing this with you.
No.
And I'm watching what used to be where the power was in the person who didn't have the knowing and understanding, and they were alienating or isolating those of us who might have. And it's completely switched.
Yes.
We're finding now this opportunity to really have to step up and practice what we preach, because it'd be easy to go, you know what, I don't care about you anymore. Well, then what are you doing here, sunshine?
Yeah.
Because your little high vibration butt is meant to be here helping people.
Right.
And just because they didn't evolve fast enough for you, and I'm finding I'm having to pull myself in constantly because, riding that wave of anger that comes with, when you've been the one they've been throwing the stones at for so long, and you're like, okay, I'm good. I'm good. I'm okay. I'm good. And then you're like, I'm bored. Stop that. I don't have to do this anymore.
Yes.
And that's we're in that it's like having one foot in one world and one foot in the next.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm finding that an interesting challenge.
It is an interesting challenge. And, ultimately, as a human here, we're all responsible for our own growth, for our own evolution. And it's the more we open up, the more we understand, the more we participate, the more we're part of that solution and that equation. But if you're refusing to take onus, to take responsibility, and there's still the blame game, the finger pointing, forget the three pointing back at you. If you're still angry at the world, but unwilling to go inside, right? Start living from the inside out and start truly connecting to your essence. There's not much we can do. It's I could say you can take the horse to water, but you can't make it drink. But however, for some, if you leave them there long enough, they'll get thirsty. But there are some that will, I'm not going to drink that water. No, Helen, way. And they'll die of thirst. And we can't do anything for those people because there's this thing called free will.
That's it. It's been a challenge. I've even noticed, I was like, okay, is this because I'm getting a little older, or maybe it's menopause, or what is this? But I'm even finding with my patients as a doctor, when I'm working with them and I'm going, okay, this is what needs to be done to do this, 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 and this. And this is my area of expertise. And that's what you're here for. And it's for me to help you. And it's this. And then they'll just disappear and they didn't do what I asked them to do. And I'm going, I'm finding this interesting little space between right now where I'm working harder and longer hours than I ever have, instead of it being the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't actually have the space any longer to entertain the people who aren't willing to do that work anymore, because my body is aging.
Yes.
I'm okay. I'm in good shape, but my body is aging.
Yeah, you just don't have the
and
same energy anymore.
Every adjustment that I do, with the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual, I'm giving that piece of myself to them in that moment. And I'm like, can we possibly be enablers? Because, we're hiding behind patience. And I think
I think it's more like, when we look at people who have been victimized, how many people want to stay in the victimization for the attention they get. And, maybe people coming back to you all the time, they make you feel good, but they don't want to take responsibility in making themselves feel good. And somewhere along the line, rather like a mother with a child, I'm sorry, I can't help you anymore until you're willing to help yourself. Otherwise, we are enabling them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it's been really interesting, kind of across the board, coming to that conclusion about how to work differently, because we have to make it into that next step and that next space that we're all moving into together. And the field that we're in right now, it used to be that those who were kind of throwing sticks and stones, they were the ones that people were listening to.
Yes.
We were kind of on that fringe, and now it's the other way around, where I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't have time to entertain this any longer. And it's not out of a meanness. It's there are so many people queuing up at the door who are ready to make that shift.
Right.
And they're serious. They're showing up.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, you can only help those that are willing to help themselves. And, you've got to participate in your own life. And it's the same with anybody that has been awoken to something that they find they can do. I denied this, or I didn't pay attention to this, or suddenly this is happening. And it's like, stop running scared. There are plenty of people out there that have had an awakening through something. Sometimes it's the cosmic 2x4. Sometimes it's just a suppression from society. But at some point, your gift has to come out. And you've got to embrace that gift. You've got to learn how to use that gift, because it was given to you to use in service of humanity. It's a part of your experience here on Earth. And if you refuse to, and if you still feel that everybody owes you and has got to do for you, and then I'm sorry, mate, you're going to be coming back again and again and again until you get it right. And quite honestly, we've had too many recycles, if you know what I mean. Too many people having to come back because they're refusing to deal with what they need to learn in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm. I agree, 100%.
So yeah, we're losing our patience a little bit, because there are too many people that do want to be helped, that do want to understand, who do want to participate. And our energy has to be with them because they want to be. And for the others, as a spiritual counselor, I always would take myself down to try and pull people up. And all they did was pull me down and keep me there. Right. Mm-hmm. So now it is, I'm going to reach you hand, but if your hand isn't up to reach mine, I can't go any further.
Exactly. I'm always reminded of the scene of in the musical Jesus Christ Superstar. There is that scene where the sick and the ailing and the lepers are coming, and Jesus is singing away, and they're crawling up on him, and he just drowns into them.
Yes.
That scene. And it was such a striking scene, because it reminded me of, like today, for instance, is Edgar Casey's birthday. And I would have been very interested in that story because my grandfather worked with him. Mm-hmm. And I've done a lot of work at the ARE in Virginia Beach. And I remember the very first time that I ever saw the couch that he used to go and lay on in trance. And it was battered.
Yeah.
And he died when he was 66. And my grandfather, Judge, who was a surgeon from Kentucky and the one that worked with Casey, he also died at 66. And he looked shocking at that stage.
Drained.
huge. And I just looked, I remember seeing that going, no, I want to serve. I want to be here, but I don't want to go out like that. That's not
But they were
interesting
against the tide at the time, right? The tide is with us. The tide is with us now. At that time, they were against all the other elements. So they had to work even harder. The energy had to be even more. Right now, people don't realize there's so much energy being poured on us and from within us to be this and to embrace this right now, that it doesn't have to be hard.
It doesn't have to be hard, but sometimes we can be our own worst enemies, especially in that transition, because, you know, it's like watching people come out of the shock of the last couple of years. You have a portion of the population who chose to be vaccinated, a portion who didn't. And the battle was real.
Yes.
And people were nasty.
Oh, yeah.
And so all of a sudden you're looking, I watched the portion of the population that just took a real beating over the choices they made. And then all of a sudden you wake up the next morning and everything's gone. And they're sitting there going, wait a second. Yesterday you're calling me this and saying this, and now it's all disappeared. Wait a minute. And it's that feeling, that feeling of going, whoa, hold on a second. What just happened here?
Yeah.
And we're in that transitory period, I think, of those of us who are working in the healing arts, and particularly on the outer edge.
Yes.
You know, like I have been bashed and berated by the medical community for years and years and years and years. And isn't it funny? This little kid came into my office 2 weeks ago, and my diplomas were always down at the end of the hall in my healing room in the back. And this child came in with autism, and he was on it that day, and he was bouncing off the walls, and he went through, and he had gone into my healing room, and he knocked a bunch of stuff off the walls, including my diplomas. Excuse me. So I ended up hanging in my workroom, in my adjusting room, for the very first time in all of my years that I've been here, these diplomas on the wall. They've never been in here. And the things people have said over the years, I couldn't care less. The number of people in the last 2 weeks went, "You're a doctor?"
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And they were like, "Oh, well, I guess I knew that." And it was really funny because I personally, as this being and this spirit and having this experience, I came to a country where they didn't even know what I did, and they'd never even heard of it. And I'd come in wearing leggings and a sweatshirt, and I don't sound like a doctor, and I certainly don't look like one. And I would chat away and just be me and do my thing and work with people. And it's been really fascinating, because so many times they'd be like, "Oh, well, I decided to come to you instead of the doctor."
Yes.
And I'm like, isn't that interesting that your go-to for doctor is a doctor of allopathic medicine? And then you will turn around and tell me that you don't think you've been conditioned by that system. And it's been fascinating. And I've just really enjoyed this last little while watching this kind of come out of that transition, or people going, "Oh, well, some of those things that you said have come to pass and really made sense now." And yeah, but there's a lot of compassionate fatigue out there amongst my colleagues, and I'm watching it, and I feel them. I get it. It's we do our best, and we try, and we get up each day, and I'm like, "All right, you got this. Come on."
Yeah.
But there have been days where I have to say I was just tired, and tired from saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over again.
I have in the same week another gentleman called Jim Hunt, who is a psychic and a reader and a coach, and he was saying how he walked away from the life that he had, business, corporate, this and that, and literally walked away to do this because he had to. It was his calling, and the family writing him off, and he was talking about autistic children, schizophrenic children, etc. And he was saying, take them off the medication under supervision and try listening to them, because so many people that are drugged up are just, I have one, Christina Hill, she and I've done a lot of shows together. she was institutionalized, and she also ended up on the street because an entity was wanting to come through to be the voice, used her as the voice, Athena and Athela, and she would come through and she would tell humans what they needed to know and use Christina as the body. And she'd been trying to come out through her for years. And instead of getting that help, it's institutionalized. And Jim was saying he was institutionalized at the age of 6 for predicting someone's death, right? So demon child. And it's just sickening that the first thing we go to, oh, there must be something wrong with you, instead of understanding that there are some people that have got something trapped inside of them coming out, and it's that releasing that they need helping. But he literally got death threats for suggesting that. And it's I've been blessed with 10 years of doing this, at least 2,700 shows, that may have had some comments, disagreeing on a subject, but I've never actually had any death threats or anything else like that, because I don't think that's my audience, thank God. My audience is for the people who really do want to know, who are trying to understand what's going on. And there's so many people that their senses are waking up, which is beautiful. It's beautiful. They don't quite understand. And the reason why I do these shows is people like you who talk about, it's okay, it's all right. Now you've just got to learn to manage it or what to do with it. Don't be afraid of it. But, it's now navigating the gift you've got and what it's for, because it's here to be in service of. That's the reason why you have it. And it's learning how to use it now.
Right. Exactly. And I'm seeing a lot of that. And it's funny, I'm attracting a lot of kids who are on the spectrum.
Yes.
Different types of, they're sick of being medicated, and they'll tell you that, and they'll go through changes. And it's like, one child who couldn't go to school for 3 days, and I was like, what's going on? And he was like, solar flares. Oh, and that's all he would do. The solar flares. And I was like, fair play to his mother for letting him stay home. And she was like, she was listening to him.
Yes.
Every child isn't the same. Every child doesn't act the same. And, if you can help guide them where they get violent and abusive and, harmful to others and themselves, is because everybody's trying to continuously contain them and not assisting them in what they need to do and say. Everyone isn't the same. I have one child who comes in here, and all he wants to do is watch trains because he's so deeply connected with trains. And then he listens to every single thing I says, does everything I do. When the trains aren't on, if somebody tries to tell him what to do, not a fear of it.
Right.
I have another child who I put dolphins on, and the whales, and he can, when they're singing and communicating and all that, that's it. I've got his full attention.
Yeah.
Every single
because
one
he's
of them
channeled.
Have to learn their language.
Yes. I had a friend whose child was very autistic and a little bit aggressive and everything else, and had a caretaker, had the mother, and I read for him. I managed to get 45 minutes of his attention, and I managed to tell her what was going on in his mind, things that he needed to know. And at that time, the parents were getting divorced. There was a lot of confront. He just wanted to be with the caregiver because it was peaceful. He didn't like this, he didn't like that. And she said, I didn't know this. And I said, because really what you need is a translator, somebody who can see his mind from the inside out, because he doesn't know how to articulate it. And that's the thing, turn to people who can understand, because there's plenty of people around that can. You might have to do your research, but there's plenty of people that can, and they can speak on behalf of. I've interviewed a few mums who were told to institutionalize their child, and they decided not to, and they went through the feces on the wall, they went through everything, but those kids went through college. Interestingly enough, they all went into some sort of creative force, like graphics, writing books. I had one on 2 weeks ago, Asperger's. He's written a great book. The detail that this guy has gone through to put into this book, the articulation of the detail. And, I look at autistic children in a way of that they're very focused and they're very channeled on what they see, what they're here to do. And really what they don't want to do is put up with the false, fake crap of society. And I don't blame them.
That's it. Well, I just hired my new office manager, has Tourette's. And this space is so much fun.
Yeah.
And she has created such a dynamic atmosphere. And with all of these kids who are coming in, it's like she can speak all of their languages,
Yeah.
you know, and it's a howl to watch them communicating back and forth, because if she starts to tick, they are in hysterics.
Right.
And she knows that they are laughing with her, not
Yes.
at her.
Yes.
And it's created such a empowering space for her. But that same thing, her Tourette started when she was 6 years old. And they said, you know, first it was like, just beat her. That's what they were told by the doctor, beat her because she's a bold child. And then it just progressed on. And so, of course, that's affected the way she's grown into an adult, the job she would be allowed to have. And I was like, you're hired, get in here.
Yes.
Start. And oh my gosh, the crack we have in here with the patients is amazing. And just the interaction, and it puts them at ease, because there's not one person out there who doesn't have somebody in their life, if it's not them themselves, who goes through something that's had some kind of label stuck on it or whatever. And so it's just a lovely environment. Like, I love the idea that people are met by somebody who is different than they.
Right. I mean, we're seeing so much more depression going on. And I think that is, you know, I did a show myself. I do a show every week myself, Sarah's View of Life. And I did one on spiritual depression. You know, and it's for a lot of people who are empathic, you know, who are highly sensitive, everything that's going on, you know, if it's not the pandemic, if it's not the war, if it's something else, you feel the weight, you feel the pain. And it's like, oh no, you've just got to rise above that. No, if we're highly sensitive, we're going to feel it, right? And it can be extremely hard, and it does lead to depression for many people, because it's how to release it. And we need to be proactive in doing something productive for other people to get out of it. And please don't tell us to snap out of it or I'll slap you.
Right. Well, it's because, you know, people have reached a point of supersaturation.
Yes, exactly.
And so when you don't tip out the bucket, and then you wake up the next day and go and add a whole nother barrage of stuff, it's like trying to, you know, wipe a tabletop with a full sponge.
Yes.
And you're just going to make a bigger mess. And, you know, I think there are a lot of people, and those of us in this line of work as well, who are reaching that point of supersaturation. I have quadrupled the self-care that I would have not been fabulous at. I'm great at telling other people about it.
Yes, exactly.
I wouldn't have been fabulous. I have quadrupled it out of absolute necessity.
Yeah.
Because
I'm glad you have. Yeah, because if you don't, the dis-ease of your body starts coming up and manifesting. And this is, I think, for the quote caregivers at the present moment, and that goes for people all spectrums of giving care. They're giving energy, they're giving love, they're giving high vibration. And if they're not having time to recharge and retake care of themselves, it is give until they're depleted. And who do they serve? Who do we serve when we're like that? So I think for anybody that is in that realm at the present moment, is please take that time for yourself. And there is a big word that you have to learn, you know, no.
Absolutely.
And very hard for people who are givers, right? But you have to learn it.
Of course it is. Of course it is. But you also have to learn to do the same things that you're going to tell other people to do.
Yes.
And you know, there's a reason you're noted for what you do, because people trust what you do because you're good at it.
Yes.
Now do it to yourself as well.
Yes.
And take the time and don't give the excuses, and, you know, make sure that you go to see your own healer. Make sure you go to, you know, go through your own spiritual practices, the same things that you would tell other people to do. It's so important now more than ever.
Yeah, I mean, I had to learn to do that it, you know, for me, 5 o'clock, I'm off, right? That's it. You know, unless utter emergency or show I've got to get up for some particular reason, it's done. And that's shut down, and I shut down, and I'll go and do what I need to do in order to divert my energy elsewhere. And that's another thing I think a misgiving, is that if you've stepped into this beautiful gifted spiritual realm of whatever you've been gifted to do, that you'll always have abundance of energy because the universal energy will go through. That is true, but our bodies can only take so much. Our bodies can only hold so much energy, and we're busy giving it out, and our bodies have to rejuvenate.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think it's
mind.
just, what's that?
And our minds.
Oh, and our mind. Oh,
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm being far more diligent with those things myself. And it's, you know, because the vast majority of the work that I do is with frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am being extremely diligent about daily use. I was always good at that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, there's a beautiful thing about working with frequency, because as you're working with the individual, you too are exposed to it. And so even if there are days where you're forgetful or you didn't do it or whatever, you're going through that session with somebody and working your way through, because really, aren't you only just working with a fractal of your own self? And so making sure that you're exposed to that which will tip the bucket, that which will bring that water table back down to a manageable level, rather than waking up every day feeling like there's, you know, water being poured into an already full glass.
Yeah.
And it does affect the way that you interact with people. It affects your productivity, your abundance, your capacity to receive.
Yes.
It's not just because, oh, I'm so tired. It's literally affecting every area of your life. And it's when people get into that space where they're so busy or so worried about taking care of everybody else that they forget to do these things, that the other areas of their life suffer financially, romantically. I mean, like, you name it. And that's it. And I think people who are in the healing arts are probably some of the worst at doing that, because we're all good at what we do for a reason.
Yes.
You know, that we don't tend to put ourselves first. And that's what makes us attentive and have that great capacity to listen to the other. But then as you evolve and the more you step into it, and as this world changes at the, you know, exponential rate that it is now, we have to be that much more diligent, or just stop, you know, just, that's okay. You've served, and that's okay. And it's all right. It's all right to stop.
Yes.
Or exit completely. But if you don't, then it's gonna get more and more difficult as we move forward, because the stakes have changed dramatically. The input of stimulus alone.
Yes. As I said, that volume going up, shocking. Right? It's just, you know, the antennas are just all switching on, and it can be kind of draining. You know, it's illuminating. It's absolutely wonderful, but it can be draining. And if you're not there to, you know, take care of your own generator, it's going to break down. And so there's more being required of us. So therefore there has to be more of us taking care of ourselves. But there's the other thing too, when you've got people that care so much, there is this feeling, I'm never doing enough. I'm never doing enough. Well, one of the things we've got to change the way we're looking at things is teaching and showing other people how to do it too, so that it's not all on you.
Exactly. And that's really the direction my own work has taken, because with the frequency, I went from, you know, the way that I used to conduct a session with somebody to then working with the frequencies to now I'm like, okay, here's your homework. You're leaving with this.
Yes.
And to making available everything.
Yes.
Like, what is it? What am I holding? What am I hoarding? The capacity, you know, for someone to need to come to me. I don't want that. I can't. And especially, I don't know about you, every single time I do a podcast, I am inundated with emails. And I have found that so challenging, because some of them are quite time sensitive. Little Johnny's going to die next Tuesday. You know, and I have found it so overwhelming that it nearly shut me down at one stage, because I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I felt like that Jesus metaphor, you know, coming where everybody was coming at me, and I couldn't. There wouldn't be enough hours in the day.
But that's where you need your community. Say, I can't, but so and so can. You know, it is now sharing of the responsibility.
Exactly.
And this, you know, a comparison and competition are two words I don't like. Collaboration, the cohesiveness of energies, is that you do this, somebody else may do something different, but it's equally as good and could be of serving. And this is where we need that community to say, this is my limit. I cannot do anymore, but here is so and so and so and so. And that's something that we have to do, because if we don't, As I said, you're no good if you're empty and depleted.
And also the people who come to you who are like, I know, I've always known I wanted to be into healing and into, I'm like, come on, people.
Yes, exactly.
We're tired
Stop.
out here.
No, when you know, I have a
Step up.
there's activism, right, which is all talking about it, and there's actionism. I want people in actionism. Will you stop talking and will you get going, please? If it's
please don't
inside
put
of you,
another meme up on Instagram.
yeah,
Come
exactly.
out here in the trenches and get your hands dirty.
Exactly. Stop talking, start doing, start being, you know. And a lot of people are doing and they haven't attached to being it yet. And you really can't do it well unless you are it. You gotta be. You've got to be.
Right.
So understanding the new healing is really understanding the beautiful frequency and the powers and everything else that comes in. You're like, you've got your medical teaching, which is great because it's the understanding of the mechanics of the human body. But along with the beautiful, any spiritual, whatever anybody wants to call it, knowledge of, I used to go to a wonderful massage therapist. Should have me stretch and that, and then go, okay, you're blocked here, you're blocked there, you're blocked there, and knew exactly how to release my chi, release my energy in my body so that I would be in flow again. And somebody else was really good at going down into the cellular level and going, okay, all right, these cells need to be released. They've been here way too long, and that's the thing is understanding we are so complex in the way we are made up. Past lives, ancestral lives, all the trauma of this life or any other life, everything gets stored in us and it's going to manifest in some sort of health issue, and we need to be able to release it. And that means we've got to release it in any which way it needs or wants to go.
Absolutely. And that's why, I wrote the book, Understanding is the New Healing. But it's also the first audible book in history to be backed with these healing frequencies. And so it took it from an audible experience into an immersive experience. So that when I'm telling this particular story about what happened to this individual here, it's backed by the frequencies that would assist anyone who's listening into a space where they could actually release. And it's just, it's quite empowering. And it's a project I'm really, really proud of. And that's available on Amazon, Audible, pretty much everywhere, I think. And it's just a really, really nice concept because it takes people from a space of, understanding is the new healing, is that I understand that nothing happens to me without reason. Nothing's happening to me by accident. And lots of people love to toss that around and say it, but when it comes to actually applying that, while everything's working out, let's say that.
Yes.
But when everything's not working out, thou hast forsaken me. I'm like, come on. And so understanding why each and everything has come across your path is the answer to your healing. It's you can move past anything once you understand why it came calling in the first place.
Exactly. And I'm so glad you used the frequency with it, because I'm a huge person on the various frequencies. And I remember somebody, doing galactic speak, speaking in tongues, and she doesn't know what she's saying. I don't know what she's saying, but my psyche does, my body does. And it's busy listening and releasing. But I realized listening to her and then the rhythm, and I'm always about rhythm. I've got to be in flow. And I realized why I go to music so much. And it's not the words, it's the music. There's certain music I'm drawn to at different times because that music is resetting my vibration, resetting my frequency. And frequency, we talk about, don't take that tone with me, right? It's the tone of life. And if you can reset that tone to be more harmonious, more in balance, then the body can be really, really good at healing itself, but it needs the help.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so that's kind of what the whole premise of that is. And it's just it gives people an opportunity. I loved this book because Promised by Heaven was all my stories. It's my life, my stories, and all this. I love Understanding because it's a smattering from across the board of a kind of everything I could think of that would be useful to people. you know, from physical to emotional to spiritual challenges that we would go through as human beings, and taking those and then backing with that frequency. You know, it's like the single frequency of 396 hertz deals with guilt, fear, shame, anger, self-loathing. There's a lot going on in that little cupcake.
Right.
And so when you can break that down for people in the way, you know, in the telling of another story, because sure, that's all we are, is we're just sharing ourselves with each other. And you can back it with that frequency. It actually gives that person the power and the opportunity to step forward and heal themselves. Their body, that psyche will recognize it. It's like your galactic speak. Even if your ears can't decipher what's happening, it's okay, because your energy or spiritual body can.
And we're rhythmical creatures. I mean, there must always be the flow of oxygen and blood and energy through our body and all around us. And we, you know, we're not meant to be stagnant. And of course, when we get upset or anxiety, we seize up and we, you know, and the thing, that's why breathing's so important. Breathe, let the energy flow. And having that frequency that turns that volume up of healing is just absolutely wonderful. And, you know, as I said, they're turning the volume up on us into going to a higher frequency, a higher hertz, that one of love, where we cannot knowingly do any harm to anyone else, because it will harm us to do so. And that loving frequency is where we're needing to be at to ascend into this new plane.
Right. Exactly.
Now, quickly tell us about these other books as well. Bringing Death to Life.
Oh, Bringing Death to Life, I wrote with Pam Young and Aidan Story and Patricia Scanlon. And so we actually decided to write that after Trisha's father had died. She had a bunch of questions, and she's a popular fiction writer, but she is a deeply spiritual individual. And she goes, you know, it would be a really good idea is, you know, if we use Dad's death and we kind of cover and ask these questions. And Pam was a spiritualist, Aidan is an angel healer, and I'm a metaphysical healer. And so each of us answered from our perspective, and that was how, you know, Bringing Death to Life came to be. And then I've got the Chakra Fairies.
Oh, beautiful.
And this is actually a story that I made up to tell my children, to teach them how to clear their energy when they were little. Don't go to bed. And so there was a fairy for each chakra who would come in and take away the day's burden, and so that they were starting fresh and new. So it was just enforcing that idea of, it is your responsibility to do this, nobody else's. And these fairies there's always help, there's always assistance if you ask for and invite it in, but it's your responsibility to ask for that. And it really empowers the child to go through and just give it up, and also to talk about, to create a dialogue that makes sense, and that they stop in the middle of the story and they'd say, oh, well, this happened at school today, or this, you know, and it allows them, it gives them a vehicle with which to speak about their pain and their joy. So it's really cool. And then I dropped in the floor, I have, this is Hugh and the Manatee. And so this is the first book in a series of gender identity books that are written for 9 to 12-year-olds. And so it's really important, because we've got now more than ever, such diversity coming into the planet. And it's very difficult for people who come from this or that field to understand that it's not just a phase, or it's not just a whatever. And it doesn't matter if you don't get it or if you don't like it, it's still happening. And so,
and there's also a spiritual reason behind where we're seeing binary or, you know, the transgender. There is something more that will be revealed, that will come out of why we're seeing this.
And a lot of that being that these folks are coming in and taking responsibility for a lot of the children that have been tossed aside by the very responsible people who are a he or a her. And they're coming in but not wanting to procreate, but to take these children in and to just shower them with love. And so that Hugh and the Manatee, it actually uses underwater creatures to explain the idea to children of, you know, there's a lot more than just what meets the eye. You know, daddy seahorses carry the babies, the daddy sea spiders carry the babies, the race fish can change from male to female at will. You know, that this has been going on many, many
Eons.
millions of years.
Yes, exactly.
And this is not a new concept.
No.
And so it just
and
gives
it's not
them a different...
sinful, and it's not anything else, right? It's just
you
not being talked about.
You can't have all things are of God in one breath and then turn around and say it's this in another.
Right.
Last I checked, it's God's at the wheel at all times.
Yes.
Not just when it's comfortable. And
Yes.
So I'm trying in that series, I'm writing and covering through a different types of stories
When do
as
you
much
have
as I
time?
possibly can. I don't sleep a lot.
Yeah. Would you I mean, very often this is when I do my traveling, and I just love to have a little chip downloading everything that's going on while I'm in my twilight zone, because it's like the creativity, the traveling, all that, the writing of the book, everything goes on then, right? And it's that by the time I wake up in the morning, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, but it is what it is. I'm not going to die of tiredness. I'll be asleep long enough at some stage, and so I'm going to do as much as I can while I'm awake.
Right.
And so it's a labor of love for sure.
Now, obviously,
and it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing as they say, you have got to know when to say no and when it's enough, and like, right? And that has to be respected. The first person that has to respect it is you, right? That boundary of, no, need time for me. Now, I know that obviously you have people that come in to see you. Can you help anybody virtually, or is it purely patients who come in to see you?
I did and always have, but then I came back because my doctor left here. So I've been back in practicing full time. So I've again just reworked my schedule where I can just fit in doing some healing sessions in the midst of that as well. So I've had to kind of back off because, like I was saying, one of the biggest challenges for me was, let's say I did a podcast last week that went out to 3 million people.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine how many emails came in after that. And it's like I've been being hit by a tidal wave. And so at some space, you have to go, okay, this is where I'm needed now. This is where I am. And, so can I do it virtually? Yeah, and have for years. But right now, at this point in time, I can't do it. But
this is where the book, understanding the healing. I mean, that for people who are needing help at the present moment, that's the book that with the frequency and everything else that's going on, there's the first step. If you can't physically help them right now, this is something that they can, listen to. And it's like the head is hearing one thing and the body's hearing another, and the psyche's hearing another, and the three of them together will come together, and that's the beauty of it. So if you're not actually able to help people virtually at the present moment, your book certainly will. Right.
Oh, yeah. And I also have on my website, which is just my name, maryhelenhensley.com. There is an album on there along with a listener's guide where I've gone through each of the frequencies, and they're available on Spotify as well. Like, we've put them out everywhere. So on Spotify, it's under Signs Music, which was created by Greg Capagna. So it's SINES, like a sine wave, Signs Music.
And this all can be found on your site.
That would be like on Spotify and across all listening.
But can you get to it from your site?
On my website, it is Larimar Dreams under the downloads.
Okay. I want to make sure people have this.
And so, people, if they download it to the laptop and then transfer it to the phone, that's how it works.
Right.
And then they have the frequencies with them and the explanation. And that's what we use as the medicine box in our house. Everything is, you go to frequency first.
Yes. Yes. People just don't actually understand how important frequency is. And, we talk, the good old Beach Boys, good vibrations way back then.
Exactly.
And, there's a lot of negative vibrations out there right now, but those negative vibrations, i.e. the war, is being met with good vibrations, and the good vibrations are going to turn that tide because there's enough good vibrations. And this is something people got to understand. I don't care if you call it prayer or just sending white light or sending good vibes, but when you send that frequency of love and energy, it works. it works. It hits the people that it's meant to hit, and they may not go understand what's hitting them, but they do feel something. So, you know, the more and more when we know people are sick or in trouble or emotional or this and that, send them that love of beautiful, loving energy. Never underestimate it.
Amen.
So can you spell your site for people who are just listening?
Yeah. So it's Mary Helen, MaryHelen, Hensley, Hensley.com.
Excellent. This has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing.
you. Thank you so much.
And, you know, for the idea, you know, even though just of somebody knowing that their child is different or knowing they're different and they're awakening, journaling it, right? Taking note, making notes, because, you know, I have a show this week out called Milestones, Pills of Wisdom Milestones. And it's like, to understand your milestones, you look back from where you've gone, you know, from where you've come from. And then you understand that I was there and I'm here. And knowing I've got here, I could propel myself over there. But it's, you know, don't look back to get stuck in it. Look back to see how far you've come. And understand there's still many ways to go, but you did it, right? So writing things down helps understand the journey. When we understand the journey, we start understanding the meaning behind it, the purpose behind it, and we can embrace that beautiful gift.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Wonderful having you. Love to have you back on again.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me. I appreciate it so much.
We do too, very, very much. So folks, please start off with the book, the audio book. It is the frequency. I mean, just the words with the frequency, I guarantee it's going to do something to you. It's going to do something. It's going to shift you. It's going to put you in gear. And from there, you're just going to want to know more and want to start your own form of healing. So please read all the other books as well, but that's the first one you need to start off with. And if you've got somebody or you're going through a process, journal, mark it down. However it is, however silly you think it is, mark it down. Until next time, folks, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. Please tune in to our selfdiscoverymedia.com/shows and you will see all the other genres that we have from you. Every week on Tuesday, we bring you new shows from illuminating people. If you know someone that should be interviewed, please contact us at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com. Now stay tuned for your next show.